We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon. When the FBI dropped that now infamous doorbell footage on February 10th, 2026, the entire country lost its mind over the obvious stuff. Everyone was laser-focused on the black ski mask, the backpack, the holster strapped to the suspect's side, the flashlight clenched between his teeth, and the way he deliberately pressed vegetation over the camera lens. Cable news had it on a loop. Retired profilers were practically fighting for airtime. Millions of people were rewatching it across every platform imaginable. But buried right there in the open, across multiple frames where a gloved hand swept past the lens, there may have been something nobody expected, a ring. That detail surfaced publicly exactly once. On February 17, 2026, a full week after the footage dropped, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News that the images appeared to show the suspect possibly wearing a ring beneath that dark glove. NBC ran it. CNN picked it up. The FBI announced it would dig into the footage specifically for that detail. And then, almost as quietly as Nancy Guthrie herself vanished, the entire conversation just stopped. Over 100 days passed without a single official follow-up. No press briefing. No clarifying statement. No controlled leak. The ring got one mention in February and then fell into the kind of silence that tends to mean something. That silence deserves serious attention. The doorbell clip is only 17 seconds long, yet it has become one of the most forensically dissected pieces of footage in recent memory. Retired FBI agents, forensic specialists, body language experts, and an army of amateur investigators have gone frame by frame through every pixel. The suspect's hand appears multiple times, reaching toward the lens, blocking the camera, pushing foliage over the view. Analysts have spent months debating what those movements reveal about the suspect's height, build, and level of planning. Yet the possibility that something personally identifying sat right there beneath that glove was only ever acknowledged publicly once, and then immediately dropped. Sheriff Nanos was precise with his language when he raised it. He did not claim the suspect was definitely wearing a ring. He said the footage could show one. That careful phrasing is telling. It suggests investigators noticed something in the video consistent with jewelry pressing against the glove material, but not definitively clear enough to confirm through visuals alone. It could have been a ring. It could have been a fabric wrinkle or a compression in the material. The FBI's enhanced analysis was supposed to settle exactly that question. Whatever it found has never been shared publicly. When a federal agency publicly announces it is examining a potential identifying detail in a major kidnapping case and then goes completely dark on the subject, experienced investigators will tell you the options are limited. If the footage turned out to be inconclusive, agencies typically say so, just as they have done with other dead ends throughout this investigation. The more telling possibility, the one that seasoned law enforcement professionals recognize immediately, is that the detail turned out to matter, and that revealing it publicly could compromise its evidentiary value down the road. In other words, it was not discarded. It was protected. The FBI essentially made a deliberate editorial choice, and that choice itself tells a story. The reason a ring matters so much comes down to how traceable jewelry actually is. Wedding bands point to jewelers, purchase dates, ring sizes, and sometimes inscriptions. Military rings can identify a branch of service, a specific unit, or a year. Class rings can narrow a person down to a single school and graduation year. Religious rings may connect someone to a particular faith community or order. Custom pieces carry design files, receipts, customer records, and photographs. Even a plain band has characteristics its finish, shape, fit, and degree of wear that forensic analysts can work with. A faint outline beneath a glove, in the right hands, can become a genuinely significant investigative thread. That hand and wrist have attracted attention beyond just the ring. Retired FBI supervisory special agent and behavioral profiler Jim Clemente reviewed the same footage and publicly suggested the suspect may have briefly exposed what appeared to be a tattoo on his right wrist when his sleeve shifted during the camera interaction. Clemente described the suspect as underprepared for the specific camera angle, calling him unsophisticated and even bumbling, and he argued confidently that these small captured errors would ultimately lead to the offender's identification. If he is right, then a single careless movement may have revealed two potentially identifying details at once, a tattoo and a ring, and neither has been officially confirmed by any agency. Then there are the gloves themselves, which behavioral expert Patty Wood flagged as notable during an appearance on Nancy Grace's Crime Stories in March 2026. Wood described them as unusually heavy-duty, the kind of protection someone would choose if they genuinely feared being physically attacked, possibly even with a blade. That assessment is striking given that Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old with a pacemaker. The decision to wear reinforced protective gloves against a frail elderly woman suggests this operation was planned for contingencies well beyond what the public has been led to imagine. Wood also noted the backpack appeared densely packed with serious equipment, which opens its own set of haunting questions about what exactly was inside it. The FBI traced that backpack to a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack sold exclusively through Walmart, and Sheriff Nanos called it one of the strongest leads in the entire case. Walmart purchase records, store surveillance, and transaction histories all represent viable investigative avenues, particularly if the pack was bought anywhere near the crime. Yet months have passed without an arrest connected to the backpack, without any public explanation of what it contained, and without any disclosure about whether investigators successfully traced its sale. The backpack and the holster have been discussed repeatedly in public briefings. The ring has not been mentioned once since February 17th. The timeline surrounding that silence is worth examining closely. The FBI released the footage on February 10th. 2 days later, black gloves discovered roughly 2 miles from Nancy's home were recovered and tested. On February 13th, search warrants were executed and SWAT teams moved near Rio Rico, resulting in detentions but no arrests. By February 15th, DNA recovered from those gloves reportedly failed to match anyone in existing databases, and an unknown male profile was flagged for genetic genealogy processing. On February 16th, sources indicated investigators were stepping back from several previously scrutinized individuals. Then February 17th brought Sheriff Nanos's ring comment and the FBI's pledge to analyze it. After that, the public record on the ring goes completely silent. Other investigative threads kept moving in the open. Agents reportedly canvassed gun stores across Tucson showing business owners the footage to see if the suspect or his gear rang any bells. Neighbors in the Catalina foothills told Fox News their home security cameras had experienced unexplained disruptions around the time of the abduction, prompting cybersecurity analysts to raise the possibility of a portable Wi-Fi jammer being used on site. Such a device, reportedly easy to source online, would produce exactly the kind of interference those neighbors described. If accurate, that detail points to someone who studied residential surveillance technology in advance and came prepared to neutralize it, which is not the behavior of someone who panicked or improvised. Even so, law enforcement has never publicly confirmed or dismissed the jammer theory, just as it has never addressed the ring or tattoo observations in any meaningful follow-up. That pattern is significant on its own. Other leads in this case have either been built upon or publicly closed out. The gloves found miles away were connected to a nearby restaurant employee and ruled unrelated. DNA testing has been openly discussed. Genetic genealogy work has been acknowledged. The backpack and holster remain active talking points. But the ring has occupied a strange, suspended status since February 17th. Raised once, never revisited, neither confirmed nor discarded. There is a detail from weeks before the abduction that makes the ring angle even more compelling. On January 11, 2026, 20 days before Nancy disappeared, the Guthrie family made a public appeal asking neighbors to reflect carefully on anything unusual from that specific night. Reporter Brian Anton later confirmed that the FBI had been specifically asking the family about January 11th and described the date as highly significant to investigators. A source went further and suggested the suspect may have conducted a full trial run near the property that evening, studying camera angles, mapping the approach, and rehearsing the route. If that is accurate, then the same ring that may have appeared on February 1st could have been visible to someone in that neighborhood 3 weeks earlier, when nothing alarming had happened yet and nobody was looking. What this ring angle ultimately exposes is less a forensic problem and more a communication failure. This investigation has been defined from the start by tight information control that may have unintentionally reduced the quality and volume of public tips rather than encouraging them. If law enforcement had confirmed even a basic description of that ring, its style, size, or type, that detail could have triggered recognition in someone's memory. A military ring, a class ring, a wedding band, a custom religious piece. Any of those could spark a very specific association for someone who knows the suspect personally. That kind of detail spreads quickly and quietly through families, workplaces, and communities. Instead, it was withheld. Jim Clemente was unambiguous in his assessment of the footage. He did not say the suspect's mistakes might lead to an arrest. He said they will. If a sleeve shifting during a clumsy camera interaction really did expose both a tattoo and a ring in the same brief moment, that fleeting lapse in an otherwise calculated operation may end up being far more consequential than the suspect ever imagined. The DNA work is underway at Quantico. The genetic genealogy is being built. If a name eventually surfaces through that process, investigators will cross-reference every visual detail from that doorbell footage against that person's documented life. Whether a ring appears in family photos, social media posts, workplace images, or event pictures. A small accessory photographed once at a wedding years ago can become powerful courtroom evidence when it aligns with a suspect's identity. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old, living with a pacemaker, and she has now been missing for more than 120 days. The blood found on her porch tells a story of extraordinary resistance. She fought back. She did not go quietly into whatever that night had planned for her. She deserves an investigation that pursues every single detail captured in that footage with total commitment, including whatever was pressing against the fabric of that glove. If anyone in the Catalina foothills remembers something unusual from January 11th, a hand, a wrist, a flash of metal on a familiar person, that memory may carry far more weight than it seems. The reward remains at $1.2 million, unclaimed. The FBI has examined that ring or whatever it was. They have simply chosen not to say what they found. When a suspect is eventually identified, and this case moves toward a courtroom, that answer will almost certainly come into full public view. Until then, it sits in a federal case file alongside the DNA evidence and the genealogy work that investigators believe will crack this open. The suspect may have planned every other detail of that night with precision. He covered his face. He wore heavy gloves. He blocked the camera. He appears to have accounted for communications, equipment, and escape. But if he forgot about a ring sitting on his own finger, that single overlooked detail, too small to feel dangerous, may be exactly what undoes him.